Hey, what's going on, everyone? I've got something that I'm going to do tonight. I've been making a blade plug for a friend of mine, Joe Wren, Dark Side Custom Sabers. I've already done a lot of the heavy lifting as far as the blade plug goes, making it, and I figured I was going to go ahead and show you guys how I do a blade plug. Now, I've gone over blade plugs in the past, way long time ago in my earlier videos. Again, not the best quality of video. I have decided that since I'm going to be doing this, and I said, you know, with a couple of small things that I do normally, I'm going to go ahead and start making videos showing you guys how I do them. So this will show you a little bit of tips and tricks that I like to do for my blade plugs. I use a lot of the same stuff to make my blade plugs, a lot of different things. I like to use found parts, pieces, different stuff, and I really like to do, let me show you guys up close. I really like to use these types of pieces that I get. I order them usually from China, but they are basically a perfect base for me to do blade plugs. They are essentially a shaving razor, replacement razor. I like to use them because it's got that little vents underneath it. Now, by no means am I saying this is like, because there are turbine style blade plugs out there. That's by a maker named Arkham. You guys go check him out. He makes really cool blade plugs. I started using these for my personal blade plugs a long time ago before I found out about that. I just dug through a bunch of things looking for stuff that looked mechanical, and I was trying to find anything that was the same size. And as a blade plug, or blade stock, I ended up using that, and then I realized that it is extremely similar to Arkham's blade plugs. So in no way, shape, or form am I trying to say, hey, this is me, this is my original concept. This is just what I like to use, and it works out really great. So with that being said, again, not trying to copy anyone's style, not trying to profit off of them. I don't make these blade plugs for everyone, usually just for a friend who's like, hey man, you mind making me one? And I'm like, yeah, sure, we'll work something out. And that's it. I don't have an Etsy store for them. I don't sell these normally. So just throwing that out there right now. If somebody wants to be like, hey man, you trying to step on Arkham's toes? I'm not. The guy makes amazing blade plugs. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and step into the tutorial part of this, show you guys what I do to make a blade plug. And again, you can pretty much use anything you want for blade plugs, any little piece. Let your imagination soar. This is a tip from a butane torch. This is another little bezel thing that I found, and some I mean, just anything you want to do to make a blade plug, go for it. Let's go ahead and get started, and I'll show you guys what I do. Okay, so one of the very first things you're going to need, obviously, is going to be your blade stock. You're going to need your 1-inch or your 7/8 inch blade stock that you're going to be using. Then from there, you're going to want to measure out how long you want your blade to be, your Neopixel blade plug. You're going to have to figure out how deep your blade socket is, how deep you are in there. Oh, by the way, here's the weathering job. I did a weathering tutorial for this the other day. Here's the finished product. Actually pretty sweet, huh? Right? Turned out really nice. But you're going to want to figure out how deep this goes in. For me, I usually stick my finger in and kind of mark with a Sharpie on my finger, and then I pull my finger out and I'm like, oh, there's my measurement now. So you can do it that way if you want to. Any way you want to do it, any way you can measure it out works. Then what you're really going to want to do is, depending on what you use for your PCB holder that goes into the blade, that's going to add a little. So what I like to do is I like to go ahead and already have it in. So that's already in. See, it adds a couple of millimeters or centimeters or whatever to the blade. Once you have that in, then you're going to measure from the bottom of that one. Oh, can't see it. Then you're going to measure from the bottom of that to however long in inches or whatever your distance is, and then you want to mark it. So let's just say if I was making a 2-inch one, which I already did, I'm going to go all over here. I'm going to go ahead and just mark. I feel like that's extremely close. Very, very on to what I need. So now I have a guide, marked it off. on how, see, I've marked it with a Sharpie, and that'll get sanded off later, so it's no big deal. And then I use a pipe cutter. I like to use a pipe cutter because then all I got to do is clean it up. It's going to be very even on the cut, and everything is going to work out very nice. I'll just need to sand down, which I will do anyways, the end piece. So reason for putting that there, as far as my mark, is so I can then line up my pipe cutter and give it some room to play with. Boom. Then lightly score all the way around. And for me, that looked very good. That was a very good, right on the dot, right on the money. I crossed over the black line perfectly, and then I will continue to cut. And obviously, however you want to do your pipe cutting, you know, go for it. Do your pipe cutting, whatever works for you. You can turn the blade. I like to hold the blade firmly and twist this guy. So I keep going, going. Oh God. Talk about a forearm workout. Oh Lord. Come on, baby. Daddy needs a new pair of blade plugs. Come on. I already did this, so I'm just torturing myself now for you guys on camera. I guess I'll just go ahead and keep going. I should have done this at the beginning. Oh Lord. And then it's going to pop off. Cool. We did it. We did it. All on my arms. One thing that's really cool about my pipe cutter, and it took me a long time to figure this out, is I have a deburring tool built in. So I'm just going to take it, insert it in here, give it some turns. Oof, sounds terrible. And we are done with the pipe cutter. We now have a very nice, clean that out, piece of blade stock for our blade plug, which works out really well. Like I said, I've already used my whatever I've used for an insert that's going to fit in to my blade plug stock, and this is going to be the face of it, or the base, the foundation of what I'm going to use for my blade plug. Now the reason I really like using these is because you really only have to sand this part down a little bit, enough to where this piece will fit in beautifully. With enough sanding and everything, it will sit in there very nicely. So the 7/8 inch ones, this is a 1-inch blade stock, by the way. The 7/8 inch ones, it will be a perfect fit. You will have to kind of finagle it and grind it down yourself, but you can make a bunch of different stuff from that blade plug, from that base. So I like to use it. It's what I do. Nobody get mad at me. I take Graflex pins if I have them, Graflex push pin. If I have one that's not the push pin, it's the faux, it twists in. Drill out a hole and throw it in there. And this gives me that look, which I really enjoy. It's kind of what we're going for here. Now I have the blade plug, I've made it, I've inserted my tip. Oh, and by the way, this tip, I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys the secret here. This is actually a either a soldering iron tip or a wood burning tip, but it looks cool. It works well enough. Again, guys, you can just get crafty with it and come up with whatever you want. Whatever you feel like makes it look like it belongs in a lightsaber emitter. Have fun with it. Get wild. So now what I'm going to do is, and this is how I do this. This is just me. You guys don't have to do this step. Me personally, I do it on almost every one of these because it has so much front-facing vents and I find it easiest to do this. So I'm going to take this guy off, which is my PCB holder, blade side PCB holder. Now I'm going to pop it off. Get on it. Get on it. Now what we have is essentially we have an empty blade stock with just the tip in there. So if you were to shine a light through this, it's going to blind you. It's going to hurt your eyes. You don't want that. So what I do, and this is the only times I really use a good bit of hot glue, and I do. I enjoy it. I feel like it does a lot for this application, and it really helps diffuse the light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit it up to where it's going to be straight up. Now this has a tip on it, so I can't exactly let it sit. It'll fall over. But I'm going to hold this as straight as I can. This is actually going to be a little different. Actually, you know what? I'll do an example with this one, and I'll do that one off camera. So this one has a flat top, so I can sit it down. So I can sit this one down very easily off to this, and drip my hot glue down in there. Now, what you want to do, this is going to be very tricky, is you want to be able to pour the hot glue in at the center of the blade plug and let it kind of molten down to the side. So you want to watch it. You want to pour from up high, not too high, but enough to where you can get a light stream down and let it melt off and cover all of this. You want every inch of this covered in there. So you will want to have every vent you have that's in here with at least a good bit of hot glue. What I like to do is I like to bring it back and fill it up to about like right there, so that way there's plenty of diffusion in the tip. So there's plenty of diffusion in the tip of this, and if it's up to about here, it gives it some weight, so that way when you slide it out of the lightsaber, it will slide out easier because this is front heavy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to do this and let you guys be able to watch. Pour a decent amount in, and again, this is just how I do it, guys. This is my way of diffusing these in an easier manner. And that actually worked out really well. And you want to make sure when you do it, you do a really light stream. Really light stream, and make sure you don't get any on the rim of the wall. You want to pour it straight down, like you want to pour it straight down in and let it melt off to the sides. You don't want any hot glue to touch the walls except for where it's being poured. So you want that to be free from hot glue drying up on the sides of the plug. So we're going to let that dry up a little bit. Since there's a lot of hot glue in there, it is going to take a second. Measure. Boom. Alright, cool. Yeah, so basically if you pour it in the same spot, if I were to hold it and hold the hot glue gun down, you're gonna get it all to drop into the same spot and it'll move in the same spot. So if you don't want to like pour it and make a figure eight. Find a good area above and pour, and then try to stay in that specific stream. You guys will find out what I'm talking about. If you don't, if this part is the part that you can't do, then Lord help you, son, because I can't. Okay, so now that we've done the prep work, oh, by the way, I sand the crap out of these sides, just so that way they will fit in any lightsaber. Some blade stock is a little harder to deal with than others. We are now going to start getting ready for the soldering side. The soldering side of the blade plug. So what I have here is I got a TCSS PCB pancake side for my Neopixel blade plug. Now these come with, it's going to be really hard to see, right in the middle there you can see that shiny little metal part. That's a 603 resistor already on it, which is pretty cool. They didn't normally come with them on there like that. See how this one doesn't have it. It's a tiny resistor, 603 resistor. There is a tutorial for soldering a resistor onto those little pads in the middle, kind of like an H. 2 little pads. This thing is tiny, smaller than a grain of rice. But you get really good at soldering those when you have to do a lot of them. Rob from Genesis Custom Sabers has a tutorial on that, and it's really good. I basically use a piece of tape and put the resistor on one side, or line it up to where they're both on the pad, solder the side that doesn't have the tape, get rid of the tape, solder the other side. It just takes some practice, pretty straightforward. Since this one already has our resistor soldered onto it, we don't have to deal with that, and that's pretty sweet on all fronts. Some people may not use the 603 resistors if they're just running one Neopixel, because it's not a lot. They might not use their resistors really for much. By the way, sometimes I just trim up these sides so they'll fit, because this PCB is broken off from, you know, a big old batch of them. And I solder it up, and I pretty much get that press fit. So this will fit. So this fits in there. See how the PCB fits into the blade holder nice and snug. It's what it's designed for. So now we have that. It's feeling much better. Alright dudes, so one thing you're gonna need, and this is very important when you're soldering, is you're gonna need some flux. Now I got this offline and didn't even realize it, but look at that bad boy. Radio Shack. That's Radio Shack, bro. For those of you who didn't know, if you're too young, Radio Shack used to be a thing, man. Look at that. Radio Shack. Ordered this online. It is nasty stuff, but it is crucial when it comes to soldering up your components. So you're going to want some helping hands, for sure. I got these little ghetto ones. You guys have to understand a lot of what I do is very ghetto. Some people have really great helping hands, which I need to update. Some people have the top of the line soldering iron, which I need to update. I actually bought a soldering iron that is a little nicer, but I always tend to go pretty much to my Lucky soldering iron. I've been using the same one for years, and it heats up to the right temperature, and it works for me, man. I thoroughly enjoy using my my soldering iron. It's just how I do it. It's how I roll. If you're wondering what I have on the tips of my guy here, that's heat shrink. That way the alligator clamps don't hurt the components that I'm messing with. Okay, sorry guys, I don't have like a macro lens. This is the best I got. Alright, so now what we're gonna do, a few different things, is while my soldering iron is heating up, I'm gonna go ahead and prep this guy here. Now what you wanna do is, I tend to just solder up the 3 that are furthest away from the resistor. If you're not doubling up on both sides, I use the side that's furthest away from the resistor, just so you have a little more space to work with. Even though there's plenty of room with these pads. So now what I'm going to do, and again, this is how I do it, you guys. If somebody's really offended by this, then I'm sorry. But do your own tutorial videos then. I like to take some flux and put it over these pads that I'm going to use. I don't need to do a lot, just a little bit. Okay, soldering iron is heated up. Yeah, that's pretty good. Alright, now you guys want to make sure that you use an ESD safe soldering iron and rosin core solder. That's what I like to use, and that's what I think everyone generally goes with. So what you're going to do is you're going to pre-tin your soldering iron. You're going to put some solder on that tip. You're going to see it kind of solder up, bubble up. You don't want a lot. If you get too much, dab it off, start fresh. That's one thing I think I always do, is pretty much dabbing my soldering iron all day long. Now, this has been flux. Put flux on the pads. I'm going to pre-tin these pads. Start with this one away here. So I got solder on the tip, and then I'm just going to add I'm going to touch it to the pad, and then add some more solder, and only for a few seconds, not that long at all. You just kind of gotta, if you haven't soldered before, I would highly suggest that you practice. This ain't a bad thing to practice on, but you just want to get it to where that touches. Yeah, that's a good one. And then I'm just gonna put it on the line here. Sweet. All right. Now, what you want is to clean this up with some PCB cleaner, which I need to show you guys, but I don't have any actually. I ran out, so I didn't use a lot of flux on this PCB. So, but you get some PCB cleaner, you'll spray that with it because you'll have some flux residue in some areas if you're not too careful. I didn't use that much flux, and I was able. You can kind of see how it's kind of nasty. So you spray it with a you spray it with your cleaner. You know, you can take a little spray it with your PCB cleaner, and then you take a Q-tip and kind of clean it off and whatnot. So again, I'm out of that stuff. Sorry guys, not the best example here. All right, sorry guys, not the best example of proper cleaning. But you want to clean that up, make sure it's not nasty looking, make sure that your soldering, see how it's not cold. Now cold joint, you will see there's no shine on that. There's no shine on your soldering marks. This is beautiful. It's reflective, shiny, 3 shiny soldering marks. You can see my reflection in them. That looks good. I'm going to put this bad boy back up there, and I'm going to get to my wire. Now for my Neopixel wires, I'm using 22 gauge wire that I have. Since I'm only doing one side, I figure why not use 22 gauge. It just makes me sleep better. Usually when you're doing doubling these up for 2 different strips, you know, you can do two 24 gauge wires, or you can do one 22 gauge wire. So for the purpose of this, to make it simpler, we're just going to do one 22 gauge. Now your data line, by the way, sorry, there's a positive data and a negative. When you're looking at, I should have said that from the beginning. When you're looking at these 3 guys right here, there is a positive, the one in the middle is a data line, and then the other one is a negative. So you want to make sure, I always use red wire for positive. Always use black wire for negatives. Pretty straightforward. But you basically always want to have those. So I've got 1 red positive and 1 black negative. Now your data line can be whatever you want it to be, as long as you know what it is. So I'm going to use, and it can be any, the data line doesn't matter as far as your gauge wire. You can use 30 gauge. I don't like using 30 gauge. I think it's extremely thick. It's really weak. If it bends too much, it'll snap off the pad. So I always just go with like a 28, just because it's easy to solder up, easy to cut, overall easier for everything to do with a 28. I like 28 wire, 28 gauge wire. It's kind of my jam. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and strip my positive. I'm gonna go ahead and strip both sides. Because I'm here, and why not? This is actually a quick way to do it. Boom. Boom. So what I did was I dipped both of those sides of my wire. I dipped both of them in flux. Both sides have flux. And I'm going to go ahead and pre-tin the wires. And again, pre-tin my tip of my soldering iron. And then I'm just going to go down that real quick. So now there's solder on that side. I'll flip it over. And I like to solder things down. I find that it's just easier to keep a clean solder mark. If I were to solder up top, there's a chance it could bubble up, fall down, and create this big bubble. But I like to solder with gravity, so the gravity kind of pulls it down. So I put solder on the soldering iron, and then I have the solder on that side, and then I make them touch, and I kind of wipe down my wire, so that gets solder all around it and down. Now, what you really want to do is you want to make sure, and this goes with anything you solder to, any wire, anything. Your lead, this is called a lead. How much I stripped off that wire, and then I soldered, and this has just a little bit. You want to make sure your leads are always the size of your pad, whatever you're soldering to. So, and I'm sorry guys, I don't have a crazy lens to focus in on this stuff, but you're basically going to want, like, I want this guy to be the same exact size as that pad. So if it's too long, trim it up a little. Since that guy is now the exact size of the pad I'm soldering it to, which is perfect. That's what we want. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to get solder onto my tip. Again, this is why we pre-tin. So pre-tin pad, tin the wire, pre-tin tip. Now I'm just going to hold that over the positive pad. I'm going to touch all this solder together until we got a good connection, which wasn't bad. Boom. First one wasn't really a good attempt, but I got it on the second one. Sometimes it doesn't line up and look good for you. Just detach it, hit your soldering iron to it, and pull it off. Just get your soldering iron to it, pull it off. But this one, give it a little tug. She's not going anywhere. That's a good joint. It looks good. It even looks like the circle. It even looks like how it was before it started, because I heated up the solder, the pre-tin. The wire is now in it and soldered over it, so that's what we want. This is a good joint. It's a good job. Way to go, Benji. Okay, guys. Sorry, I did it backwards. I just wasn't thinking. I wasn't thinking because I was doing the tutorial. I like to solder up whatever I'm going to use LED-wise first, and then solder it to the PCB. Jump the gun. So you can use pieces of the strip from if you make a blade and whatnot. This is what I tend to use. I have some, I cut off from previous blades over the years, and you keep them because you can use them as PCBs. Or you can order off Adafruit and get this guy, which is a mini PCB pixel. You got your soldering on the back, super easy to solder up. This one's very simple to solder up. Strips are definitely take a little bit more practice, but this one, where the arrows are pointing up, it's got like a 50 and an arrow heading that way. You just solder these three right here. You got your positive, your ground, which is your data, or out, or whatever, and then your negative. So you just solder up the three of these, and then solder that to your PCB. This is a really easy and good way to make a Neopixel blade plug light source. But personally, I use these mainly for crystal chambers, just because it's one light coming into a crystal and whatnot. So it may not power up a lot. If you have a really short Neopixel blade plug in like a 7/8 inch plug, these could work really well. So that's an option. But I'm going to be doing this guy. So you got, it's going to be really hard to see. You have your three right there. So you're going to have whichever side has the resistors on the side of the strip. That's your positive, I believe. Yeah, that's your positive. And then on the very other side is your negative, and then the middle is your data line. You will see it too. It's marked positive, negative. So positive has the resistors on the side of the strip. Negative has the arrows going up. Okay, so I've added flux to my 3 points of contact for soldering on the pads. I'm going to get it together. And I'm going to pre-tin them. Now, like I said, this one's going to be a lot harder to do. It's very finicky. But you can get it. Just takes some practice. And I'm sorry if this is a little bit out of focus or something. I'm trying real hard here. Boom. Again, this is a lot harder. Much more difficult, because this dude, these are small pads to solder to. See those three little silver dots? Those are my points. Positive, data, negative. Now we're going to solder the wires to them. I'm going to try to do this for you guys, but this is a really tricky part. I got to kind of get close. I don't know how the camera angle is going to work out for you. So, going back to my wire that I've already soldered up. Remember, I did it a second ago, and I was like, crap, I should have done that. I'm going to solder my positive now to that. Now the pad is very tiny, so you're just going to pre-tin, touch it, boom. I made it look really easy. It's really kind of not. It's kind of a pain in the butt. That is connected. That is solid. We're good. Works for me, man. Works for me. All right, I'm going to get these other two soldered. Okay, guys, I've gone down and I've done my strip. I did all my wires, positive, data, and negative. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to solder them to the PCB, and we're almost there. So now what you want to do is you want to take into account how your pixels, the strip's going to be soldered to the PCB and how it's going to stick up. Now it's going to have to, so the blade, all this right here is going to come through here and up through here, right? So I don't want these wires to be bending and getting all crazy, because then it could snap one of these connections, one of these leads, and that's no good. You don't want that. So what I want to do is, see how if you're looking at it like this, these are flipped. My positive doesn't line up, my negative doesn't line up. What I want to do is I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to solder it laying across the wires going that way, so then the wires can bend up and straight. That way there's no real pressure on the joint whenever we do them. So now we got everything soldered, pre-tinned, soldered, all ready. Now we're going to do the final step, soldering this guy together. So I'm going to add solder to the tip, and I'm going to go down the line of my PCB. I'm going to get some good connections here. Call this guy down. One. Let's get some more solder. This data line is being difficult. That's why you definitely want to make sure you cut them to the proper length. So that way it should be really easy to touch down. Boom. Boom, baby. Just got that positive left. Go home. Go to your home. Go to your home. Woo! Alright. Well, these feel pretty good. They're not going anywhere. I got all three of them soldered down onto it. Positive, data, and negative. Now what we're going to do is it's going to come through here. We're going to make sure that we're not breaking anything or stressing anything, and that worked out really well. Now here's the part where you really want to be careful. You don't want to bend these too hard. You don't want any of these to come undone. But you want to bend them just enough, very slowly. Some patience, because if one of these pixels snaps, then we are not going to have that thing light up. So you can give it kind of a bend in each little area where you can cut it, and it should end up looking like this, right? like a rainbow. Now, I'm going to take it. Guys, I completely forgot to mention this. If you wanted to, when you were done building the connector part, how you have it kind of doing the little rainbow thing up and over, you can fill in here with some, if you wanted to use hot glue, like a little dab of hot glue, or a little bit of E6000, which I usually use E6000 to go down in there just to keep the wires from moving around back and forth, which this one won't do that. There's really no play on it. But if you wanted to take an extra precaution and have your wires and all that stuff kind of stay static, keep it from free flowing ever, you can do that. Now, it's not exactly a requirement, since this just goes into the plug and sits there. It's not going to wiggle or go anywhere. But if you wanted to take that precaution and do that, you're more, more power to you. But you just a little bit goes a long way. It's just enough to get that wire, the wires from staying, for the wires to stay still. Just enough to get the wires to stay still. You don't want to pour a ton in there and then something go wrong. You have to take it all apart, and then you have to try and clean all the glue and all that stuff off the wires and everything like that. So it's really kind of a at your own caution. Personally, like I said, I just use a little dab, keep the wires from moving around if I'm going to use it. With this one, I feel pretty confident that these two blade plugs that I've made tonight are really not going to go anywhere. They're not going to get damaged, and if they do, it's an easy fix. So, something to keep in mind. That's something that you want to do to those guys. I don't really think anything's going to happen to them. I think they are pretty good as far as nothing's moving. So, again, up to you. And we're going to test this baby out, man. She's in. Snapped in. Everything feels good. Let's go ahead and throw it into the saber that I'm going to be testing it with. For Joe, one of them was going to go into a flagship, which is great. I usually test out putting it into a flagship because it has a very tight emitter. So let's go ahead and see if this guy worked. I'm going to feel it press up against those pins there. You want to push it down slightly so you can feel it kind of bounce. That's good. That's what you want. Let's go ahead and tighten it down. That kind of hurts. Holy crap, that kind of hurts. All right, cool. And let's go ahead and see if this thing works. Okay, my strip was bad. So this strip, these 4 pixels were bad. I had to redo them. Did it off camera. My battery's dying, so while it was dying, I charged it a little bit. And now I'll go ahead and let's see if this one works. So I put it in again, same thing. Push the pixel down, push the plug down, and let's see if she lights up. Ha-ha! Let's get a different color. Red looks pretty good. You guys, please excuse the speaker. It's blown. Looks really good. Oh, that sounds terrible. I went ahead and muted it. The speaker's kind of awful. So there we go. Blade plug is working very well. Let's go ahead and change colors. Looks great. Everything looks good. Oh yeah, look at that. That looks good. That's a good looking blade plug. Turned out very good. Alright, so there you go, guys. That's pretty much how I do it. Pretty straightforward. You can get other ways of doing this, but I have always enjoyed making these. It is part of the fun for me. Look at how beautiful that etch work is. Pete's Powder Emporium etched this bad boy for me, and it is one of my all-time favorites. Super good. Totally made the saber just come to life. there we go. We can get a couple different colors. I can show you guys real quick. Let's go ahead and cycle through. You got your green. Looks good in all colors, man. So, all right, there we are. Little showcase of this guy for you, huh? Yeah, why not? Show it off. I mean, she's a beauty. This is seriously one of my favorite sabers I've ever done. This is the KR flagship. I've heavily modified into an Augustin lightsaber. There's videos of it on my channel. If you guys are going to ask me in the comment section, that's a beautiful lightsaber. What is it? I know it is a beautiful lightsaber. It is Augustin inspired flagship. There are countless videos of this saber on my channel. I have an in-depth video on it when I made it. I've sampled a lot of Kyberphonic Fonts Old Knights sound package on this, and it's a really good saber. The speaker is blown right now, so it sounds terrible. Sorry about that. Alright. So there we are, guys. As a quick, well, I don't know how long it's going to take. So that was a video on how to make a Neopixel blade plug. Now there are many ways to do a Neopixel blade plug. There's the stock custom works lit Neopixel, which your pogo pins for your actual connector have 5 of these type of PCBs, mini PCBs that I showed you. They have that on the PCB. I've never used them. It's not really a priority for me. I mean, I need to someday. I don't usually get too crazy. Usually when I make a blade plug for a lightsaber, it usually stays for that lightsaber, but there are options. But this one will be for Joe's Scrap Tech, I think, which is an amazing lightsaber. He just finished that up not long ago. We'll go ahead and finish up this one along with the other one, Joe, and I hope you like them. I think it turned out really cool. It's a really cool blade plug. But there you go, guys. That's just a quick how I do it. I'm sure everyone's got their own ways of doing it, and I'm sure that somebody will think that this was a horrible way to do it. Somebody will be like, pretty sure you don't have to do a Neopixel blade plug. Pretty sure that you suck. That's what's gonna happen. Somebody in the comment section will say, so I'm pretty sure that's a dated technology. This is the way I like to do it, man. You use the stock Neopixel connector PCB lit things, go for it, man. To me, I think it's just a bunch of extra steps. This takes no time at all, which again, I haven't done that one, so that one could take no time at all either. But I know you have to solder on the 2 603 resistors, so keep an eye out for, keep that in mind. If you're not fond of soldering tiny little resistors on PCBs, you may want to practice out. All right, guys, so that'll do it for this one. I hope this is another type of tutorial video that was interesting for you and helped you out. Get you to try to do your own Neopixel blade plug. Thank you guys so much for watching. Almost at 1,000 subscribers. If you have not subscribed, please do. I'll probably shut up about it forever once I hit 1,000 subscribers. I never really had a milestone in mind or anything, really like I gotta make it to 100,000. I never really. This is just for fun, and I hope that it teaches you guys something and helps you build your custom sabers. I learned off YouTube. I learned off of other builders. Sadly, I think a lot of them have left YouTube and the hobby and deleted their channels. And I figured I got a lot of stuff and I do this, so why not? Hope you guys enjoyed it, and until next time, I'll see you in the next video.
scruffy looking.